Good evening, or should I say, welcome to the witching hour. Can you feel that? That little prickle on the back of your neck? That's not the air conditioning. That's not nerves. That's the Grayson family reaching out from the grave, brushing icy fingers across your skin, because the moment I say their name in this room, they listen. Close your eyes for just a second. I want you to picture a house. Not just any house. A house that should have been torn down 100 years ago, but somehow still stands on the bluffs above the river, windows black as old blood, roof sagging like the spine of something that died in agony. Locals call it Grayson Manor, but they only say it once, and then they spit on the ground and make the old sign against evil. Children are told if they walk past the gates after dark, the wind will carry their names inside, and something will write them down in a book that has no end. Tonight, I'm going to take you through those rusted gates. I'm going to walk you up the cracked marble steps where the ivy grows thick and deliberate, like it's trying to choke the house before the house chokes everything else. I'm going to open the front door that no key has fit since 1897, and we are going to meet the Graysons. All of them. The ones who lived, the ones who died, the ones who did both at the same time. But before we cross that threshold, I need you to understand something. This is not a ghost story for campfire giggles. This is not a tale you laugh off on the car ride home. What happened to the Grayson bloodline is a stain that will not wash out. It is a wound in the world that still bleeds. And once you know the full weight of it, you will never again drive past a lonely Victorian house at night without wondering who was watching you from behind those lace curtains that haven't moved in 80 years. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard a name and felt your stomach drop, the way you do when you hear the word, cancer, whispered in a waiting room? For the people of Black Hollow, Virginia, that name is Grayson. Say it in the diner and the waitresses stop pouring coffee. Say it in the hardware store and the old men suddenly remember they left the stove on. Say it in church and the preacher's voice cracks mid-sermon, because even men of God know some darkness is older than Scripture. It started, or at least, this is where the paper trail begins, with Captain Elias Grayson in 1784. He came home from the Revolutionary War with a chest of Spanish gold, a limp, and eyes that had seen too much. He built the first wing of the manor on land the Cherokee warned him was cursed. They told him the ground there remembered every murder ever committed on it. Elias laughed, paid them in rum, and broke ground the next morning. Within a year his wife Abigail hanged herself from the chandelier in the ballroom. No note, just her slippers lying neatly side by side beneath her swaying feet, as if she'd stepped out of her body the way you step out of a dress. Elias buried her in the garden and planted night blooming cereus over the grave. He said the flowers opened only under moonlight because that's when Abigail liked to dance. People thought that was romantic. They didn't know the flowers were fertilized with more than dirt. Elias remarried within 6 months. His new bride, Constance, was 19, pale, and already pregnant when she arrived. She gave birth to twins in the dead of winter. One lived, one did not. The dead child was buried in the same garden. No one thought to ask why Elias dug the hole himself at 3 in the morning with a lantern and a grin. The living twin was named Ambrose. From the cradle he never cried. Not once. Nurses swore that when he was hungry he simply stared at your throat until you fed him. By age 5 he could recite the funeral rites backward. By age 7 he had his first little accident. A playmate went missing in the woods behind the manor. They found the boy 3 days later sitting in a circle of dead crows, smiling like he'd been invited to a party no one else could see. Ambrose grew into a man so beautiful it hurt to look at him directly, like staring into the sun. Women followed him through town like dogs after meat. Men crossed the street when they saw him coming. He kept a journal bound in something that was definitely not cowhide. The pages were thick, almost velvety. Historians who've handled it before mysteriously dying, I might add, swear the book is still warm. In 1849, during an influenza outbreak that killed half the county, Ambrose locked the iron gates of Grayson Manor and held a 3-day masquerade ball. Music drifted down the hill night and day. Lanterns burned blood red. Guests arrived in carriages. None left. When the sheriff finally broke in, he found the ballroom exactly as it had been. Tables laden with rotting food, champagne still fizzing in crystal flutes, and 42 masks hanging from the chandelier by their ribbons. No bodies. Just the masks, turning slowly, as if the heads were still inside them. Ambrose was never seen again. But the journal was, and what he wrote in the final entry still keeps certain archivists awake at night. I'm going to read it to you now, but if you feel the sudden need to leave the room, I won't blame you. No one ever has, but there's a first time for everything. He wrote, "The hunger is not in us. We are in the hunger. We thought we owned the house. The house only needed a family that would never leave. Tonight we go into the walls. The walls have been waiting to be filled." After Ambrose vanished, the house stood empty for 12 years. Dust settled, mirrors cracked, vines strangled the chimneys. Then, in 1861, a distant cousin named Lavinia Grayson arrived with her husband and 4 small children, fleeing the burning of Atlanta. They thought they'd found refuge. They lasted 9 months. When neighbors finally summoned the courage to check, they found the parents nailed to the dining room wall in the shape of a cross, mouths sewn shut with black thread. The children were sitting at the table playing cards. They had been dead for weeks, but their little hands still moved, dealing out another round. One of the search party went mad on the spot. He kept screaming that the children were waiting for him to take his turn. The house was boarded up, condemned, burned, twice. Both times the flames guttered out like candles in a tomb. The bricks refused to char. The beams refused to fall. Jump forward to 1918. The Spanish flu again. This town has the worst luck with pandemics. A young nurse named Margaret O'Connell disappeared while making house calls in the countryside. 3 weeks later her fiancé, desperate, broke into Grayson Manor looking for her. He found her wedding dress laid out on the master bed, veil arranged just so, but no Margaret. Only a single line written in blood on the mirror, "She said yes." He shot himself in that room. The bullet is still lodged in the ceiling. If you stand directly beneath it at 3:33 a.m., you can hear him reloading. I could go on. I will go on. Because the Graysons didn't stop with the 19th century. They simply got better at hiding. In 1932 a traveling preacher set up a tent revival on the edge of Grayson Land, claiming he could exorcise the house once and for all. He lasted 4 nights. On the 5th morning they found his tongue nailed to the front door and his Bible open to Job 41, the page soaked red. Someone had underlined in fresh ink, "Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook?" In 1957 a group of high school kids dared each other to spend the night inside. Only one came out, Tommy Whitaker. He was catatonic for 40 years. In 1997 he suddenly started speaking again. Just one sentence, over and over, until he died last year. They're not dead. They're practicing. Practicing what? That's the question that keeps me awake. Practicing what? Because here's the part no one wants to say out loud. The Graysons aren't gone. They're patient. In 1984 a real estate developer bought the land, planning to raise the manor and build condominiums. Bulldozers arrived at dawn. By noon every machine had stalled. Fuel lines clogged with what looked like human hair. One dozer burst into flames with no accelerant. The driver swore he saw a little girl in a blood-stained communion dress waving at him from an upstairs window. The project was abandoned. The developer hanged himself in his office 3 days later. Left a note that simply read, "The interest rate was too high." And still the house stands. Still the garden blooms with flowers that have no business growing in Virginia soil. Still, on certain nights when the moon is wrong, the piano in the sealed music room plays Chopin's Funeral March, slowly, lovingly, like someone who has all the time in the world. I've been inside. Yes, me. 3 years ago, I thought I was braver than I was. I thought a camera and a crucifix and a bottle of Jameson would be enough. They weren't. I won't tell you everything I saw. Some doors, once opened in the telling, cannot be closed again. But I will tell you this. The Graysons are still adding to the family album. There are photographs on the mantelpiece taken long after the last known Grayson died. Polaroids. Fresh. Some of them show people I recognize. Neighbors. Missing persons from surrounding counties. And in every single picture, standing just behind the subject, pale hand resting on their shoulder, is a smiling member of the Grayson clan you will never find in any history book. They don't want your soul. That's fairy tale nonsense. They want something far worse. They want you to stay for dinner. And the terrifying truth, the truth that turns this from a ghost story into a warning, is that the house is hungry again. It's been quiet for too long. The vines are thinning. The gates are rusting off their hinges. And last month, for the first time in 70 years, the for sale sign went up in the weed-choked yard. Someone is going to buy it. Someone always does. Maybe it'll be a young couple looking for a fixer-upper with good bones. Maybe it'll be an investor who doesn't believe in curses. Maybe it'll be someone in this very room tonight, listening to me, feeling that delicious shiver, thinking, how bad could it really be? So here we are, you and me, on the edge of the abyss, staring down into 6 generations of elegant, meticulous, ravenous evil wearing the skin of a family. In the next hour I'm going to lay every document, every death certificate, every whispered confession before you like cards on a table. And when I'm done, you will know exactly why the name Grayson is never spoken aloud in Black Hollow after sunset. You will know why the river changes course to avoid the shadow of that house. You will know what Ambrose meant when he wrote, "The walls have been waiting to be filled." And when you leave here tonight, when you step out into the cold and the dark and the ordinary world, you will carry a splinter of that house under your skin. You won't be able to dig it out. You'll feel it every time you pass an old Victorian with too many gables. Every time you hear a child laughing in a room that should be empty. Every time you smell night blooming flowers on air that has no business being sweet. So take a deep breath. Hold someone's hand if you need to. Because we're about to open the front door of Grayson Manor together. And whatever you do, don't let them seat you at the head of the table. They save that place for family.